Well, hello and welcome to the Pen to Publish podcast from the two Alexas. If you're penning and publishing or even just planning to pen and publish, you're in the right place. I'm Alexa Whitten, author, typesetter and independent publisher, and
I'm Alexa Tewksbury, author, editor and proofreader. You can never have too many Alexas. We love getting feedback, so do please review and subscribe. And we also have a group full of like-minded writers, which you can join over on Facebook and get your writing results happening. It's called the Writers Refinery, and the link will be in the show notes that accompany these podcasts. So let's get started.
So here we are, series 5 of the podcast. When Alexa and I first talked about doing a podcast, and I'm not ever sure we've really spoken about how we came about. Have we, Alexa, about how we came about?
I don't think we have. We were so eager to launch in with all this,
Exactly.
all this editing and writing and publishing stuff that no, the history of the podcast has not been told.
So this is a little backstory of how the podcast came to being, and then I'm going to be explaining exactly what this series is all about, because this really finishes what we set out to do. We've called it the Pen to Published. So this series is talking all about the publishing side of the process when you come to write a book. So it was when I was walking home after having been out to dinner with my ex-in-laws who live just up the hill from where I am in Portsmouth. And on the way home, I gave Alexa a call. Now, I'll confess I had had a couple of G&Ts and they might have been Spanish measures. So I was probably feeling, let's just say, in a creative mood. And I remember exactly when I got my phone out, I was just entering the high street of where I live. And I thought, you know what? I really want to do a podcast, and I know the perfect person I want to do the podcast with. So I think I gave you a call. It was a Friday evening.
Yeah.
And I said, Alexa, I've got an idea. What do you think?
Yeah.
And you basically said,
I've had the same idea. Because we've been working together quite a lot through the lockdown. So there was a lot of client overlap between our two businesses, and having two Alexas, it just seemed like a great way to market it. So how many Alexas does it take to make a podcast? 2.
Exactly. As much as we hate the Amazon Alexa, and a likeness of mind in the fact that when I explained to you what we wanted to do, when we started talking to each other, we started coming up with all of these really good ideas. And I think that phone call lasted for quite a while, didn't it? Because it just sort of we came up with all of these fantastic episodes of what we could explain, how we could explain it. And I think it was either the next day or the day after, we came up with a rough outline. In fact, I've still got the sheet, a piece of paper where I wrote down, I basically was able to map out series 1 to 3, very quickly understood that 3 series wasn't going to be enough. So we decided we were going to do 4, and then doing the 4 series, which was the writing, the editing, typesetting and publishing. And yet here we are on series 5 with another one in the pipeline.
I think because the more you talk about it, the more you realise, oh, we haven't discussed that and we haven't told them about that. And there's just so many sort of little bits and pieces that writers need to know to get the whole picture of what they're getting into.
Exactly. And I think series 4, we realised we couldn't do the publishing series until we had addressed quite a few of the bits and pieces that we discussed in the last series. It was almost like there were loopholes in the story that needed tying off. So I said to Alexa, look, we can't do the publishing series yet because we've left off some important factors of the process before you get to the publishing side. Hence why we came up with the idea of the sort of DVD, you know, like the extra DVD outtakes that you see on a DVD. I mean, I know people don't watch DVDs anymore, but we get those extra bits at the end of a series. So we decided that's why we decided to do series 4. So anyway, so this series, here is what we're going to be covering. Today, we're going to be looking at exactly what publishing means and the main differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing. Episode 2 will be looking in an intro into the main ingredient that you need and how that works. And I'm not going to explain what that is at the moment because I want to tease you and make sure that you listen to episode 2. Episode 3 will be making sure that your manuscript is ready to go for both trad publishers and self-publishing. And Rachel talked a little bit about this in our last episode. So if you haven't listened to that, go and take a listen. It's full of amazing stuff. And her episode, which is series 4, episode 8, just gives a wealth of knowledge about all of this. Or once you've listened to this one, go and take a listen. Episode 4 talks about your printing options, so the different bindings and what that means, as well as things to consider, which will have a knock-on effect for your typesetting design and budget. We will also look at online printing options and print on demand. Episode 5 looks at other formats of your book, so Kindles, ebooks, audiobooks, including how you can repurpose your book's content for both fiction and business books. Episode 6 will look at pricing, and episode 7 will be looking at where to sell, including social media. And if you're in our group, the live that Kylie did for us on the 18th of October, 2022 was amazing. So if you're not in our group, get in our Writers Refinery group, link her in the show notes, and go and take a look at that episode because it is amazing. And then episode 8, we've invited the lovely Rachel Rowlands back for another chat interview because I'm sure there'll be questions sparked from the last episode that she recorded with us. And if we're talking about publishing, it just seems silly not to have her back.
So what you're getting with the series is a treasure trove. So yeah, you can just earmark it as treasure trove, must listen.
Yes. Basically, what publishing is all about. Okay. So let's get straight into what publishing means. And I think the term has become muddy over the years. And in truth, it's kind of been kept a bit of a secret because it's really only in the last 7 or so years that self-publishing has become something that's been available. Now, I hate to say it, but with companies like Amazon and KDP, self-publishing has become affordable and available. And so many now are doing this option, and we're seeing a massive boom in the market. So what does publishing actually mean? Well, it just means printing and selling your book. In fact, here is the definition when I searched online for that term. The occupation of preparing and issuing books, journals, and other material for sale. That's what publishing means. Basically, printing and selling. So when we break it down to its simplest terms, publishing is just getting your book ready for sale. So that doesn't necessarily mean printing either. It could mean ebooks, Kindle, or audiobooks. If you've got an audiobook that you're selling, you're a published author in the definition of what published means. Now, to maximize where you can sell your book, I'm going to be explaining the most powerful bit, and that is what changes everything. And again, it's all become a bit of a mystery because no one knows really what it means and where you have to get one. And what am I talking about? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to be explaining all about that in the next episode.
I feel as if there should be some kind of dramatic music at this point. Da, da, da.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to want next week's episode because this is basically the magic ingredient that takes your Victoria sponge into one that can be on the Bake Off. Let's just put it that way. I don't know if you're a fan of the Bake Off, but I love the Bake Off.
I love Victoria sponge.
There you go. Now, do you have more cream than jam in your Victoria sponge, Alexa?
Oh, I actually prefer it just with jam. But lots of jam.
I don't know if we can be friends.
Oh no! This is like the scone. Is it the cream or the jam first, or the oh no?
Hey, which way is it? Is it the Devon or the Cornwall way? Which way is it?
Well, I've always done it the Devon way. I'm not Devon born and bred. I've lived in Devon a long time. But I've always done it the cream first and then the jam. But the Cornish do it the other. She's shaking her head at me, everybody. She's shaking her head at me. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble.
No. I am from Cornwall, but I agree with the Devon way.
Oh, that's phew. I thought that was twice I'd lost you.
But I'm afraid Victoria sponge has to have cream.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, it is very nice with cream. I think maybe I'm just, if I make one, I just think, I won't bother with that bit.
That's the best bit. My future mother-in-law makes the best Victoria sponge, but her layer of cream, and I'm not exaggerating, I am showing Alexa.
Oh, this is big, listeners. This is probably
it's
4 inches.
3 inches of cream.
3 inches. 3 inches.
3 inches of cream.
Gosh,
yes, but her Victoria sponge is amazing. But anyway, I digress. I don't know how we've got onto the topic of. Oh, that's right. The magic ingredients that you need, which we'll be talking about next episode. I almost feel like when we record our next episode, we need to be enjoying a piece of Victoria sponge.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. The only thing is, if I can I shouldn't revert back to this really because we've gone completely off point. But when you cut into a cake with that much cream, doesn't it all sort of splurge?
No,
or does she?
Not if you use a bread knife. You can then sort of make sure that it doesn't splurge.
I'd never have thought of that. I'll try it. I'll send you a photo.
I tell you what, next time my mother-in-law to be makes us a Victoria sponge, I will remember to take a photograph because it is divine. It is divine. Anyway, sorry, we're talking about publishing. Here we go. Right. We're talking about publishing. Let's get back on the subject at hand.
Sorry.
So I've given you the definition of what publishing is, and basically it just means to get ready for print and to sell the book. That's what publishing means. I'm now going to try and simply explain the differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing so that hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer understanding of what both entails. And also Alexa One has had some experience with traditional publishing. So hopefully she'll be able to jump in and give us her experience as well. The biggest differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing come down to 3 things. And they are time, cost, and judgment. And I think we can narrow it down to those 3 things. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. I think those are the 3 points to bear in mind when you're considering which route you should take. Yeah.
So let's take a look at each of these independently and I'll explain the differences. So the first one is time. Now with trad publishing, it's going to take time. If you listen to Rachel's interview in the last series, she will tell you that if you're not a patient person or you're in a hurry, traditional publishing won't work for you, as you have to find an agent who will then take your book to a publisher. Now, there is a caveat here, as there are some publishers that might take you on directly, but that is very much a rare occurrence. So for this episode, I'm going to go on the assumption that you're going down the really traditional route. So how do you find the agents is all explained in the last series, and we don't have time to go into that here because I'm just explaining the differences. But to get yourself an agent can take months, if not years. So you need to be in the waiting game to get your submission looked at. Obviously, with self-publishing, you don't have to wait at all. Of course, we are assuming that you've got your book ready for print. So that's all the various stages of editing that we've already covered, and you've got your book typeset and your cover sorted. So that's time. It's all about whether or not you can wait or whether or not you need to publish straight away. The second difference is cost. Now, with traditional publishing, most of the costs will be taken care for you. Although I have heard of some agents requiring at least a basic edit before you begin. In fact, Alexa, you helped Jennifer get her book edited, didn't you? As she is now in the process of trying to find an agent.
Yeah, it's a really good idea if you're planning to submit your book to an agent to get it professionally edited and proofread before you take that step, that submission step. Because if an agent is interested in your book, they may want to make their own edits. They may want to change the book structurally, for example. This happened with a memoir I edited. The agent didn't make the changes themselves, but they felt it likely that a publisher would want to change the order in which the events appeared and were discussed in order to make it more saleable. So they will have their own ideas of what will make it saleable. So having your book edited and proofread before submitting doesn't mean that's the end of the process, but it does give your book the best chance once it's in front of an agent. Agents receive so many submissions, so many. And if they begin reading something that doesn't hang together well, that's full of punctuation and spelling errors, it's highly unlikely that they will continue to read and offer to represent you. What you submit needs to be as polished as it can possibly be so that you have the best chance of standing out from the crowd. And editing it and proofreading is something that you would pay for to achieve that, even if it's then going to go through another editing process if you're fortunate enough for an agent or a publisher to pick you up.
Yeah. So as much as we say traditional publishers absorb all of the costs, that isn't necessarily true right at the very beginning. So, but obviously, when you're self-publishing, you're going to need to make sure that that edit is as best as it can be. So apart from that, all of the other costs associated with book printing and design should be taken care of for you if you're going traditional published. So your book will be typeset and a cover designer will be hired. Although what cover you end up with won't really be up to you, and you probably won't have much say in the overall look of it. Then your book will get printed and your main marketing will be done for you, with you obviously appearing in most bookshops. Although again, it's interesting to hear that most traditional publishers, authors now, if they're not famous, so I'm talking about, you know, the celebrity cooks, the celebrity people who have now written a book, actually the person has to do some of the marketing too. In fact, before you get a deal, you might well be asked if you have a social media following, as well as what you can bring to the table in regards to selling your book. And whilst we're talking costs, don't be fooled into the lure of a big advance and high royalties. Usually with a traditional publisher, if you're not a named person, and I'm talking about celebrity, your advance will be minimal. So think 5,000 rather than 50,000. And your royalties will be pennies on the pound. Of course, when you self-publish, all of these costs will be down to you. So you'll need to pay for the editor, proofreader, typesetter, and cover designer. You'll also have to pay for printing, and the marketing is most definitely up to you. But after saying all of that, if you're making 100% of the cover price, which you will be, then because you won't be doing that when you're traditionally published, then you may well recoup your costs. So see if it's an investment rather than anything else. It's really important that you do the math, because even if you get a traditional publisher deal, perhaps a year or maybe even 2 years after you've written the book, what are you doing in the meantime? Are you working full time? Is that where your income's coming from? If you then look at what you're going to be getting in advance and cost per copy over the period of time it's taken you to look for a traditional publisher, you might find that you're earning £100 a month and that's it. So it's usually a lot less than what people think. So like I said, do your math. Now, the last one is judgment. And I'm including this because it's twofold. So with traditional publishing, your book is going to be judged in a critical way. You're going to get rejection letters or even no letters at all. And you need to be prepared for that. You may even get to the agent part and think, yay, I've done it. But the publisher then might not want to take your book any further. So you're back to square one. Again, I'm going to point to Rachel's episode and urge you to listen to it if you haven't already, as she has a story of her book and where she got to. Of course, with self-publishing, you don't have to do that. You can publish whatever you like, whenever you like, although I wouldn't suggest you publish anything plagiarized or slanderous, or you could find yourself in a lot of hot water. In fact, you can even find yourself being prosecuted. So you can't really publish whatever you want. It has to obviously be in the guidelines of your own work and not slanderous, but that's a different subject. But you're not going to be judged by anyone other than your readers. However, with that comes the double-edged sword, because you get the kudos of being traditionally published, and it shows that you've gone through all the hoops to get there. And let's face it, who wouldn't want to be recognised for their writing prowess if you've got a traditional deal? Alexa, how did you feel when you got your books taken up by a publisher?
Well, it was really exciting. It was, I think my first book were traditionally published back in about 2006. And the series gradually grew, and it was exciting, but I didn't end up getting those publishing deals in the traditional way. I wasn't submitting things and had it accepted. What happened was I'd submitted things in the past, going back years, and had them rejected. And I know so much more now about how to make a proper submission. And they were terrible books. They were really, really bad. So, well done, publishers, for rejecting them, because they were grim. Anyway, but I was very fortunate back in the early 2000s in that my brother, who works in animation, was commissioned to make an animated version of The Christmas Story, and he asked me to write the script. So through doing that, I met a small publisher, and they began to commission me to write children's books for them. And then because of that, I was commissioned eventually by another publisher too. So I was writing books knowing they would be published and knowing I would get paid for writing them, which was actually a very privileged position to be in, because I did that writing work alongside running my editorial business, and it all became part of my income. When you're writing and then submitting, you've got no idea whether you're going to get paid. You've got no idea whether anyone is going to be interested in publishing your book. So it felt like a privilege, and it was exciting. And when I was signing my contracts and things, it was all very exciting. But I was just fortunate in that it happened via a different route because of this animated film that I was involved with the script writing for.
Right. So your story really is a bit of an exception to the rule, really, in terms of what we're talking about.
Yes.
Because what we're talking about is knowing the main differences between getting your book published through a traditional publisher and self-publishing. And obviously the judgment part is probably, I would say, probably the biggest difference. I mean, obviously time and cost are factors, but judgment is probably the biggest part of the jigsaw, because having a traditional publishing deal going through an agent, you're going to get the kudos of being traditionally published, which is mega, because as Rachel talks about in the episode she did, who wouldn't want that kudos of knowing that someone has taken your submission out of the thousands that get submitted, and they've then taken it to print. So I would say probably judgment is the biggest.
And that's also in terms of your self-esteem, because if you're writing a book and think, right, I can do this all myself, I think this book is great, and I think it's good enough and people will love it, and I can put it out there if I self-publish it. If you're sending it to agents, you're at the mercy of agents and publishers, and that can be really soul destroying. If you're getting, say you submit to 10 agents and you get rejections back from all of them, that then takes that takes a lot of strength of character, really, to think, okay, fine, but I still believe in my book, so I'll send it to another 10.
Yeah.
With self-publishing, you don't get that rejection, and you don't have to overcome that feeling of, your self-worth isn't affected in the same way, potentially.
Yeah. And of course, with the fact that self-published authors aren't judged, well, I mean, they are by their readers, but with that, though, there's also a lot of rubbish out there. Right? I mean, there is some rubbish out there. And of course, your book will be part of that. But if you get the right team of people behind you, then the chances of your book being a success will be much more likely. And Alexa and I pride ourselves on producing high quality books. And I do reject ones. I mean, we both reject ones that we don't like the look of. In fact, we rejected someone that came to us last year. We realized we just weren't right for the project. They were wanting also to skip parts of the process. And do you know what? I've got my name on these book covers when they've been published by Compass Publishing. And it's my reputation as well. And you don't put your name to anything either, do you, Alexa?
No, because I think if in a book, if a book says that I've edited this book, if my name is in there, it's important for writers to see that it's a good product, that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So if I have my name down as editor for something that really isn't that great, I'd worry about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do you remember when Spid the Spider books came along, and you phoned me up and said, I've got this opportunity to work with this author who's writing this series of books. And I looked at the typesetting, and there were two fundamental things that were wrong with how it had been typeset, and it just looked so self-published. And we're dealing with an agent called Guy, who is sort of the publicist, who is, do you know what? I have to say, he's been brilliant at taking on some of the advice that I've said, that will just like, if we just move the title verso page to the beginning, rather than it was all at the end, if you remember rightly.
Yeah.
And the page numbers, for some reason, were massive in this book. And they didn't need to be. I don't understand why the page numbers were made as a part of the feature when you don't really need page numbers in children's books. Anyway, I think we have helped make that book look really good, and it's proving really popular. There was a great review about it the other day, wasn't there, on Facebook?
Yeah.
And these books are I really have come to love Spid now. And I know you're very involved in the writing aspect, the editing aspect of the Spid the Spider books. But he's a funny little chap, and he's quirky. And isn't he in Devon? Is the author in Devon?
He's in Somerset. He's near Taunton.
Okay. And doesn't he walk around? Doesn't he drive a Spid car or something?
He's got, I think, yes, Guy said he's got a Beetle car with big Spid the Spider on, and he has a whole full body costume of Spid the Spider that's pink, I think. I'm sure it's pink. And yeah, he's very known, I think, around those parts, Somerset.
Right. Well, we'll put a link to the Spid the Spider books in the show notes as well. I mean, we don't publish them. I don't publish them through Compass at all. Don't get me wrong. But it's even when I get involved in projects that I'm not necessarily publishing, if my name is put to the book, which very kindly the author has given me, thanks in the acknowledgements, I want to make sure that the book looks as best as it can be. And I think we really pride ourselves on making sure the books that we're involved with, if they're going down the self-publishing route, that they are as best as they can be. Because there is a lot of crap out there that people have self-published, but also there's some fantastic authors out there that have been self-published. The lovely, wonderful Joseph Milson, he's self-published and his book's amazing. So
and he's self-published, and I tried desperately to get him a traditional publishing deal because he's known in the theatre world and in the film world. I mean, he's been in a James Bond film. Come on.
He went to Daniel Craig's 40th birthday party. That's where the book opens up. I mean, I'm 1 degree separated of Daniel Craig now because I met Joseph Milson. So
but that shows how tough it is to get a publishing deal, a traditional publishing deal. You've whatever their current sweet spot is, if you don't hit it, they won't take you on.
I know.
So
it's tough. But anyway, so there are the main differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing. Don't underestimate the marketing side of it, because once you've finished, if you're going to self-publish, I think a lot of writers underestimate just how much energy and time that part of the process can take. Now, if you're in our writers group on Facebook, go and check out Kylie Dixon's live that she did on the 18th of October, like I mentioned earlier on. She was book spotlight for this month, October in 2022. And she gave a great live about how you can promote your book using stories and where you can promote your book as well. As you know, it's one part of the publishing process that I don't really get involved with, but Kylie has come up with some brilliant ways of selling books. And if you're not in the group already, then why the hell not? Go and sign up. And it's totally free and it's full of advice for all young aspiring writers.
I loved working on Kylie's books with her. As you know, she's writing book 3 at the moment, everybody. It's very exciting. But she really opened my eyes to what you can achieve with a vigorous social media strategy. And I'll be honest, it's not something that comes naturally to me because it's very social, obviously, social media. And Alexa knows this. I am one of the most unsociable people I know in life generally, but there's no denying that if you do put yourself out there in that way, you do see results. She's sold nearly 2,000 books now from putting herself
out there
in people's lives via social media.
Yeah. And she's in many bookshops as well. We're going to talk a little bit about how you get your books in bookshops in another episode, because that is the number one thing that always people basically want to know how to do if you're self-published. And obviously, if you're traditionally published, that's all gets done for you. But she's really made it her mission, even though she's self-published, to get into as many bookshops as possible. And not only is she writing, which she talked about yesterday, it's also about going in and talking at schools, going inspiring young children, going and talking to children about how you can make your dreams come true if you really believe in what you do. So it has a knock-on effect, not only just for her writing career, but also for her other branch of her business, which, funny enough, is all about social media. And hence why she's so good at it, because, you know, she's on social media a lot. But I think if you are a writer and you're not necessarily a social media type person, you do need to find an avenue as to how you're going to sell the books, because it's a bit like a website. Just because your book's listed on Amazon doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to buy it. So, but that is for another episode. This one, hopefully we've now covered the main differences and what publishing is. I hope you found the first episode of this next series useful, and we will be talking to you next time about the secret ingredient that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode.
Which has nothing to do with Victoria sponges, actually.
Or whether or not cream comes first on a scone. Without this one thing, though, this magic ingredient, then selling your book will be much harder. So do tune in. And with that, it's a bye from me.
And a bye-bye from me.
Bye-bye.